Have you ever thought about how someone can balance research, teaching, and real-world practice in one meaningful career? Get ready to explore the dynamic and rewarding world of clinical psychology with Kelly Horne. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. We're here to explore how psychology shapes our everyday lives and impacts the world around us. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this episode of Professionally Psyched, we're unpacking the journey from undergraduate curiosity to academic leadership. Join first-year psychology student Elka Chamley as she sits down with Kelly Horne, a clinical psychologist, PhD candidate, and educator in the Master of Clinical Psychology program at James Cook University. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about the many pathways psychology has to offer. Enjoy.
Good morning, Kelly. How are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks, Elka. How are you?
I'm doing well, bright and early here at JCU in Townsville.
Yes.
Just like to start by just asking you who you are and what your background is.
Yeah, sure, thank you. So my name is Kelly Horne. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and I'm a clinical educator and lecturer in the Master of Clinical Psychology program here at JCU. And I've been doing that role for coming up to 7 years this year, so for a little while now.
Yeah, awesome. And just for those listening, my name is Elka Chamley. I'm a first year undergraduate student studying Bachelor of Psychological Science, and we're here today just to talk a little bit about career pathways and Kelly's research and some barriers that she's found, I guess, in the profession and how we can work through that as a psych community. So Kelly, when did you study psych? Why did you get into psych?
It's been a while, so I think if I go back and cast my mind back to, I'm going to say about 20 years ago now, when I was handed a thick kind of book which contained a whole list of career options, and I would have been in grade 10 I think at that time. And looking through, as I did, studiously reviewing all of the career options, I came across, the career of being a psychologist. And for me, I think at that time, it sounded like a really interesting kind of career path. And I was really curious about human behavior and how the brain works. And that was kind of where that was born from. And I think at the time too, I had it in my mind that I'd go on to be a forensic psychologist as well. So at the time, and I don't know if you know these shows, but Criminal Minds and CSI were quite prolific at the time, and I had this image of myself jet setting around, doing criminal profiling across the country, which obviously not realistic and didn't end up happening, but that was kind of what set my pathway off towards psychology. So I ended up straight from high school and going into a Bachelor of Psychology and went all the way through and did my honours degree as well.
Yeah, awesome. So what work did you get out of that immediate sort of finishing your undergrad and then your honours? What did you pursue after that?
Yeah, so I think for me, and thinking back, I graduated in 2010. I graduated with Honours Class 1, so I did pretty well in my degree, but I think at the end of it, it was during a time in which undergraduate degrees, and there's a nice shift happening at the moment, there really wasn't much clinical work integrated with those undergraduate pathways. And so I think at the end I felt a little lost and a little kind of disillusioned as to, didn't I enter this degree program to help people and to work with people? And I found it was really research heavy, very theoretical, and I guess the messaging for us at the time was around there's more options for you if you go through research and pursue a PhD. And at that point in time I didn't really feel like that was where I wanted to be. And I also felt quite young. So I had gone, high school, straight into undergrad and then straight into my honours year. And I felt like I needed perhaps a little bit more life experience, some more opportunity to work with people to kind of work out, is this going to be a good fit for me? So I actually ended up taking 4 years off. And during that 4 years, I went traveling, overseas. I ended up doing some volunteer work in like diversional therapy for residents in aged care facilities who had dementia. I worked with kids in foster care. I did crisis support. And essentially, I came full circle and decided that, this is kind of the place that I want to work within and I want to pursue. So I ended up relocating from to Townsville rather, from New South Wales. I met my now husband overseas who happened to live in Townsville. So that's how I kind of ended up here about 12 years ago now and pursued my Master of Clinical Psychology.
So you're currently working on a PhD in research, and can you just tell us a little bit about how your experience travelling and that sort of background and all that experience that you got to have, how did that inform the research that you wanted to conduct?
So my research is looking at the biopsychosocial and cultural factors that impact the neurodevelopmental outcomes of infants who are born moderate to late preterm. So that's our bubs who are born between 32 and 36 weeks. Completed gestation. So I think for me, where that research interest came from, and I should say that's my PhD project as part of my academic role here. That interest really came from the clinical work that I ended up doing from my master's degree, which I completed here at JCU some time ago. I ended up having a career that was probably more focused on young people, on children, on families, and that's where I felt it was more meaningful and purposeful for me to kind of focus my intervention and subsequent research on, in terms of that really upstream early intervention approach there. And so it fit really nicely into my clinical work. And then I think too, life, becoming a mum and then, seeing, the neurodevelopment of your own child and everything that's associated with that, further kind of piqued my curiosity in that particular area. So I think, it was really around my clinical work that, led to that particular focus in my research.
Yeah, that's awesome. You and Piaget, hey? Studying your own kids, leading to further psych research.
I try not to, but you can't help yourself sometimes.
Yeah. I think my mum's a psychologist, so I think my upbringing was probably pretty similar. She enjoyed studying, my brother and I. So what about barriers and challenges that you've faced in that research? How far along are you in your PhD in terms of the barriers that you've faced already in that?
100%. So I'm doing my PhD part-time. So I have a very far away end date of 2030, which feels like very much like in the future, but I note that it's only 5 years from now. So it'll be here before we know it. In terms of barriers, I think it comes back to workforce shortages. So I have, as an academic, we have a lot of different kinds of roles and responsibilities, particularly in the clinical stream, so around teaching and supervision and the like. So oftentimes, workloads can kind of grow and compete against things like research, happening in a more timely way, I suppose. So I think that's, one of the barriers for me has been around essentially having enough time to be able to focus on the PhD.
Yeah, so you're doing your PhD part-time. Is that meaning that you're also working clinically or in the psych field as well in the rest of your time?
Well, so I work full-time as an academic staff here at JCU, and so that role is kind of divided into research, which includes my PhD, clinical supervision of our master's students, and then also teaching into our postgraduate pathway as well. So it's kind of divided into those 3 streams. I have previously, except for this year, had my own small clinical caseload as well, in which I would see clients at the JCU psychology clinic for a while there. But that's kind of on hold at the moment, and particularly as I integrate my sort of clinical skill set into my research focus at this point in time. So I'm kind of bridging those 2 things together in terms of conducting assessments and writing reports for the infants and families that are involved in the study in that way. So kind of just a shift in my clinical skill set to focus more in the research realm at this stage.
Yeah, thank you for your commitment to people and helping people, whether that be by research or clinical practice. You spoke about burnout and workload being a barrier that you faced, particularly in the industry. Do you think other people, other professionals face that also?
Oh, 100%, and particularly living in and working in Townsville. So in a regional centre, there is just simply a shortage of registered psychologists and clinical psychologists in particular. And so what that means is that, we can take on large workloads. Our more junior psychologists as well can be taking on quite complex cases as well, which means that, there is risk of working outside of your scope. Hopefully there's some good supervision and around that happening, but most definitely burnout is certainly a risk in our profession, and it is important to make sure that you're looking after yourself, that you've got really good mentors, your own peer supervision in place, and being able to have really good boundaries as well, knowing that it's okay to say no. And that gets easier, I like to think, as you get older. Sometimes we can very much be yes people and want to please and want to do the right thing. And I think that's, a natural part of being in a helping profession too, is to want to say yes and to everything. But it's so important to have clear boundaries so that you can look after yourself and that you can have a long career in psychology.
Yeah, that's so true. No matter what work you're in, to have those boundaries between that personal and professional life. What advice would you give to someone in my position, undergraduate student or 4th year student studying psychology here at JCU or here in Australia or anywhere? What advice would you give to us for entering the profession?
Yeah, 100%. I think, right from the start is around making sure that you've got those good self-care strategies in place from the beginning, in terms of your managing your study load and, setting yourself up nicely to, I guess, have that practical kind of skill set when you do enter into postgraduate training and into your career as a psychologist. So I think, self-care right from the get-go is important. I think, in terms of beginning your kind of journey into undergraduate is to, yes, there is absolutely a focus on your grades and, the academic pressures, and there is a minimum, requirement to get into postgraduate training. You fully recognise that. But I guess reminding yourself is, what is it that kind of brought you to this profession or this, pathway, and what is it that you're hoping to achieve? And I guess I'm particularly talking to those who are, may be interested in a clinical pathway, and, to really seize that opportunity in your training to seek out clinical opportunities. So if there are electives around counselling or assessment or whatever it may be, to really take those on board, to do the wills subjects, your placement kind of subjects in undergrad that are now available. If there's an opportunity for you to do some volunteer or some casual based work, working with people in some kind of helping capacity, whether that be support work or crisis support or whatever, kind of floats your boat, I suppose, so long as, there's some working with people happening. I think that can really help with your decision making around what pathway do you want to follow? Is this the right fit for me? It's, perhaps not so helpful getting to the end of the degree and not having much exposure or experience to that to go, actually, I don't really know like anything about that. And that was my experience in terms of then I went off and had 4 years and tried to work it out. But if you have the opportunity along the way to do so, and I guess, keep that open mind and that curiosity that kind of brought you here in the first place. And, we see at the postgraduate level students who are particularly curious, do the best, and are open to learning and knowing that it's okay not to have all the answers, but being open to learning about that is really important. So maintaining your curiosity, looking after yourself, seeking out opportunities as they become available to you, I think is probably some key pieces of advice. And we are here in terms of staff and clinical staff like myself to reach out to and chat to, and I'm more than happy to have those conversations as well. So making connections to the academic staff here is also another good way to go about it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for those points. Just get out there and have a go, and look after yourself whilst you're on that path. But it's been lovely chatting with you today, Kelly. Did you have any last comments for our audience?
Not that I can think of, no. But my door is always open. So if you want to chat, if you want to follow up anything about me, I'm here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kelly, for today. It's been lovely to chat. Hope to be able to read your research in future. Who knows? Maybe I'll be in third year reading one of your papers or something like that.
Yeah.
But thank you for today.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.